Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. A memorial procession in Penticton begins in an hour to honor a fallen firefighter. We'll take you there live just before the procession begins. And some Vancouver residents have reported some pretty nasty raccoon encounters. We'll ask, what can we do to prevent conflict? After 12:30, the rain may help our lawns, but for the most part, they have gone dry. Is brown the new green? We'll ask how we can encourage alternatives to the manicured green lawns. I'm Michelle Eliot. This is BC Today. Thank you for joining us on CBC Radio 1 and live streaming on CBC Gem, cbc.ca/BC, and on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. Good to have you with us. In less than an hour from now, at 1 o'clock, a memorial procession will begin for Zachary Muse. Muse was a contracted wildfire firefighter from Ontario who died while fighting the Donny Creek blaze in northeastern BC. It is the largest in the province's history. RCMP say the 25-year-old died on July 28th when his heavy-duty ATV rolled over a steep drop on a gravel road. It was in a remote area about 150 kilometers north of Fort St. John. Now, Muse was working for Big Cat Wildfire. That's an organization based out of Summerland. And here's Mike Smessman, the owner of Big Cat Wildfire, speaking about remembering Muse.
Crew members were very fond of Zach. He was just a really hard-working individual. He was a pleasure to be around. Great worker and just an all-around great person that really cared about his community and wanted to make a difference and make an impact. The memorial itself is just a way for us to honor, our brother.
Now, Muse was the fourth Canadian wildfire firefighter to die on duty during what is a record-breaking season. He's the second firefighter to die in BC. On July 13th, 19-year-old Devon Gale died when she was struck by a falling tree while helping fight a fire near Revelstoke. And as you have been hearing, there are more than 400 wildfires burning across BC, and international help has been flown in to help with firefighting. We're going to bring you the procession as it starts to begin in about 1 hour from now. It does start at 1 o'clock, and we'll hear from a reporter, a journalist joining us live from Penticton coming up. That's coming up just before 1 o'clock. It is now 12:08, 1:08 in the Mountain Time Zone. And to another story now out of Vancouver. A man and his small dog are reportedly injured after an unfortunate incident with a group of raccoons. Jacob Moss and his dog were walking down West First Avenue late at night when they encountered the two critters. And the raccoons reportedly started to attack Moss and his dog, and soon after, a third raccoon appeared. Moss has been treated for injuries, and his dog as well was also treated at an animal hospital. But unfortunately, the dog lost an eye from the attack. Now, the manager of animal services for the city of Vancouver, John Gray, sent us a statement that said the city is investigating wildlife being fed in the area of the raccoon attack, but couldn't provide more details at this time. The statement also reads the city of Vancouver does not have a specific raccoon policy, but it does have a new wildlife feeding bylaw, which prohibits the feeding of wildlife anywhere in the city. Now, these encounters with urban wildlife are commonplace right around the province, and we're asking you, what are your own encounters with raccoons, and how can we prevent these attacks and conflict? You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. On your cell phone, star or pound 690. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca. And joining me to take your calls is Andrea Wallace. She's a wild animal welfare manager for the BC SPCA, and she joins us now from Victoria. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
This encounter that we've seen in media reports, it sounds like it got pretty nasty. I mean, the man and his dog were injured, and they were bitten into by these raccoons. How common is that?
Yeah, well, first, I'd like to say how sorry I was to hear about this incident with raccoons and the poor dog that lost an eye because of it. But I am glad to hear that their furry friend is on the mend. Um,
Hmm.
these incidents really are a good reminder that as human areas expand into urban development spreads into natural areas,
Mm.
human wildlife conflicts become more common. And we're really fortunate to have wildlife in our urban areas, but it does require us to be more aware of how to safely coexist with these animals, both for our safety as well as for the welfare and the safety of the wild animals.
So
So
go ahead. Go ahead.
go ahead.
No, no. I'd like you to finish your thought. You said we're fortunate to have these urban wildlife in our midst. What is the benefit of having raccoons in your neighborhood, around your house? People may think, oh, the goal is to get them out, right? Get them away.
Well, I think, for most people, having critters around our urban centers is a welcome addition. We like to observe them. We like to watch what they're doing. There are some animals that also, control our rodent populations. They
Mm.
pollinate our plants, and it's just part of a natural ecosystem that we're lucky to have. And at this time of year, the young raccoons that were born in spring are growing up and they're venturing out to explore their area and find food and shelter. So they're still pretty young and they don't, know what they're doing really. And they're still with their mothers and those mothers are going to protect their young raccoons from any perceived threats. And we might not feel like we are a threat to a raccoon, but they might see differently if they feel cornered, if they feel like they can't get away, or again, if they're young and they're unsure of what you are or what your pet is, they might be uncomfortable and show a little bit of aggression towards us.
Mm. And so, is this time of year more prone to these kinds of encounters, and or would they be more apt to be aggressive?
Well, there's certainly, when you're coming into contact with a mom and their offspring, that's when, they're going to be a little bit more aggressive towards any perceived threat, any kind of predator. And that's essentially what we are to them. We are predators. And so, we just need to learn how to exist with them and how to coexist with them in this space. It's not all ours and it's not all theirs, and we need to find a way to coexist.
Hmm.
And so one thing to remember is that wildlife are always looking for food. That's what they need, just the same as us. They need food, water, and shelter, but they don't need our help. We certainly do
Right.
not need to feed wildlife. And in fact, it's the feeding of wildlife that causes more of these types of conflicts because they are becoming food conditioned, which means they're comfortable around people. They're expecting people to give them food. And that's not a good thing. It's dangerous for everyone.
Right. And so in this case, the city did confirm they are looking into an investigation into wildlife feeding. How big an issue is that still? We hear the messages, do not feed wildlife. There is a ban on it within the city of Vancouver, and you hear just the messages, right? That, as you said, they don't need help in doing so, and all you're doing is habituating them to humans. But how much of a problem is that still? People just continuing to feed wildlife.
Yeah, I think it is still fairly common. Not all municipalities have a bylaw like Vancouver for wildlife feeding. So we definitely encourage more wildlife feeding bylaws across BC.
Hmm.
It's also, important to realize that like you said, they don't need our help. As long as we manage our attractants and keep those food sources contained, um, we'll be able to coexist with raccoons and other animals much better.
Okay.
It's also not healthy for wildlife to be eating human food
Hmm.
and to be eating, things like bread is not part of their diet. We do not need to feed them food that is essentially unhealthy for them.
Let's take some calls now. My guest is Andrea Wallace, the Wild Animal Welfare Manager for the BC SPCA. And we are asking you about your own encounters with raccoons and how do you think we can avoid these kinds of conflict with wildlife, with raccoons specifically around BC? And do you think feeding wildlife is still a problem? You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733 on your cell phone, star or pound 690. Susan is joining us now from Vancouver. Hi, Susan. Thanks for calling in. And what's your own story about raccoons?
Well, about 4 weeks ago, our dog was in our backyard. It was not quite sunset, so it was still light out. And we heard some squealing coming from the backyard and ran out and saw him just shaking and two baby raccoons and a mom raccoon heading up the telephone pole in the corner of our yard. We checked him out. We did not appreciate any injury, but about 3 to 4 days later, he started being very protective of his tail, whimpering. The smell was emanating from it. We took him to the vet and found out that he had a fracture in the bone, one of the bones of his tail, and all the tissue distant to that was dying, and he had to have it amputated. So he lost about 40% of his tail.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
What a, I guess, what a trauma to your dog.
To the dog, to us, it was very traumatic all over. And I'm sure to the baby raccoons and the mom.
Sure.
But, I understand that this was his backyard and he felt protective of it. And we see a lot of wildlife in our area because we live near the endowment land, but never a fight like this.
Wow. And have the babies and mom raccoon, have they been back at all?
We haven't seen them, but every time our dog goes into the backyard, he heads straight to that corner where they were.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And how is he doing now, Susan?
He is better. It's been about 4 weeks. He still has to wear the cone 24 hours a day because his tail is still recovering. And he was definitely subdued in pain for the first week.
Yeah.
He hasn't had a chance to explore what's left of his tail, and I think that is something that's going to be a new experience for him once the cone comes off.
Yeah.
But he's starting to, I think, be his regular happy self, but he's still certainly impeded by this cone and. Yeah.
Well, tell me, just as we wrap up here, you said you live near the endowment lands. So, yes, a lot of parkland around you. What are your thoughts around how we can coexist with raccoons? And as you said, too, this was them just, living what nature requires of them as well.
That's a great question, and I'd love some guidance on that.
Sure. Yeah.
I know that we're all here sharing the planet. And they're all just acting out on their own nature. But I sure would love this not to happen again.
Yeah, I bet, of course. Yeah, well, all the best to your dog's recovery and your family, okay? Let's get some...
Thank you so much.
Yeah, take care. That's Susan in Vancouver. Yes, Andrea, some guidance. You just said, things, the don'ts. What are the do's that she would like to not have this happen again, of course?
Yes, and I'm very sorry to hear about that. And I'm glad that the dog is recovering, even though a little bit of the tail has been lost. That's a very unfortunate situation for sure. So one thing I would recommend is also supervising pets outdoors. It's not always possible to keep them inside, day and night. Obviously, you want to be able to let them out in your yard. And if you are letting a pet out in your yard and it is getting towards dusk or before dawn, turn lights on and maybe even take a step outside yourself to make sure that there isn't a wild animal like a raccoon in your yard before letting your pet out. Because of course the dog is also doing just what they would do, is protect their yard. Yes. And the mom is doing what she normally does, which is protect her babies. And so we just want to make sure that the two don't come together. And so just turning lights on, making some noise, checking the yard for any animals or any signs of animals that might be a danger to your pet before letting them out.
And providing that kind of deterrent, as you say, turning on lights and that kind of thing. Yeah. Would noise do the same thing?
Yeah, noise, mostly like clapping your hands, loud noises, even a wooden spoon on a pot is a good one. And just making sure that they know you're there and you're not interested in having them around, so they will move on.
I certainly make a lot of noise when I take out the garbage into the alley. Emily is joining us now. If you'd like to join our conversation, we are talking about encounters and conflict with raccoons after a story in Vancouver that ended up with a Vancouver man and his dog being injured after an encounter with 3 raccoons in Vancouver, and the city of Vancouver confirming that they are investigating into a case of wildlife feeding. Although it doesn't have a raccoon-specific rule or bylaw, it does have a bylaw against feeding wildlife. So we're asking you, is that an issue where you live? And what are your own stories of encounters with raccoons? How do you think we can avoid these kinds of conflict? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, star or pound 690. And Emily is joining us from Richmond. Hi, Emily.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. Hello.
Thanks very much for calling. Have you had an encounter yourself?
Yeah, I was hearing the conversation about wildlife feeding, and I live in Richmond, just quite close to the Costco. And for the past 2 years, I've lived in that area, and everyone in Richmond knows, there's a million bunnies, just so many rabbits.
Yes, that's right.
But I've observed so many times people bringing even chopped vegetables, beautiful vegetables, out into the streets to feed the bunnies around my area. So I think a lot of it is the lack of maybe education or knowledge that, it's not helping the bunnies. And even to the point that there's been excess vegetables on the grass left there. Like if we go for a walk, there's just so many, carrots and celery. And
wow.
So, and I've seen it in the past 2 years, and I'm not really sure what to do. I don't want to confront those people but maybe just more awareness, or even someone from the city to come and just monitor the area, because I think it's probably at this point well known that people come, it seems like they make a special trip to that area to feed the bunnies and take photos of the bunnies, but it seems a bit misguided, as you guys have been discussing.
That's so interesting. And yes, we've heard for so many years about the rabbits that are living, and wild rabbits, I guess, around Richmond. But this issue of people actually taking out vegetables in order to feed them. Have you tried calling the city, Emily?
I haven't. It's something I see now and then, but maybe I really should reach out. It's hard to know who to talk to.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
But I might do that. I think that might be helpful, and just to take action on it. It's just something I've seen in the past 2 years.
Well, I really appreciate hearing from you. So I'm glad you called us too, because I hadn't heard that before, that people actually intentionally put out vegetables on the street. Thanks so much for calling, Emily.
No worries. Have a great day.
You too. And so, Andrea, is that something you've heard? And do you know if Richmond is one of those municipalities that has a bylaw against feeding wildlife?
Yeah, this is news to me. I haven't actually heard that before.
Yeah.
I definitely recommend reaching out to the city and letting them know about these observations, because that's a concerning turn of events. Really, it's really quite surprising.
Yes.
And so definitely making the city aware, and if more than one person is reporting this, that's also a good thing. And if no action is being taken, report it again. They really need to know how often it's happening and when, and the more reports they get, the better.
And what about for people who just maintain vegetable gardens in their backyards, or as we hear so often with bears, for example, put out their yard waste or their food waste, their garbage too early? And so then you have bears coming around. What about that, just managing without actively feeding wildlife?
Yeah, so unintentional feeding is also problematic. So we
Mm,
definitely want to never intentionally feed wildlife, but also manage those attractants. So making sure your garbage is not put out until the morning of collection rather than the night before. Keeping it in a closed, secure place while it's not out for collection. You can also clean compost bins and garbage bins regularly so that they don't become so smelly.
mm,
And that's really attracting wildlife as well, is that smell. You also want to collect ripe or fallen fruit from your yard because that's
mm.
also an attractant for wildlife, not just for bears, but also raccoons and skunks and squirrels. They're all going to be coming and looking for that food. Um, Keeping pet food inside it might also seem um, kind of common sense, but definitely you don't want to be leaving pet food outside because that's also very smelly and would attract wildlife as well.
Yes, and their sense of smell is so much stronger, right? So much more sensitive too. So what you think you
Yeah.
perhaps is not emanating a smell enough to attract wildlife, perhaps is. And what about other behaviors? A lot of communities in BC just are more bear aware in the north, but in Whistler as well. But recently, a woman was seen approaching a black bear with a dog, and this was despite onlookers warning her to stay away. So sometimes people have this inclination, right, to either approach an animal or take videos rather than do the smart thing. What human behavior can actually put wildlife in danger like that?
Yeah, so getting too close to wildlife can put both the wild animal as well as the person or the pet in danger. And I was very shocked to see that news report about the bear in Whistler and a dog and a woman getting so close to that bear. Yeah, I'm very glad it ended the way it did, but that is a huge wake up call for everyone.
Mm,
And making sure that you're keeping a distance from wild animals, particularly while you're walking a dog. You definitely don't want to be coming in that close of contact with any wild animal. It's dangerous for everyone, including other people who are on that path. If the
sure.
situation had gone a different way, that would have been a very dangerous situation. So it's very fortunate that it ended the way it did. But again, it's a wake up call, and things that we need to think about is, how much space is enough space. Can we take a different route? Do we need
Mm.
to walk by? Can we sit and wait for the animal to cross the path and go into the bushes before we continue on our way? So all of those things people should be thinking about when they're walking in areas where wildlife is known to occur.
Okay, and I imagine these are all very useful tips as people. We just had the BC Day long weekend, and of course, a few more weeks of summer, and people are heading out into those natural areas more frequently over the course of the summer. And so these kinds of bits of advice become even more crucial, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely don't want to have any encounters in the wilderness where help is potentially far away.
And finally, let me just ask you, you started off by saying we are fortunate to have these urban wildlife around us. They do provide benefits. Are there some animals that just have a negative reputation? I think when we think of squirrels, we think they're very cute. Perhaps not so much with raccoons. Do we need to change that a little bit and just have some more respect for, first of all, what the dangers that can happen, but also just the benefits that they do pose? I think of coyotes as well when we think of coyotes.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's some animals that have gotten a bad rap for
Yeah.
things, right? So, raccoons have a bad rap for making a mess in pursuit of a perfect meal, and they're dumpster divers and that kind of thing. And I think we really need to get away from that kind of terminology. It's a wild animal, and they're doing what they naturally do. And just because some of their behaviors might not be in line with what we want, it doesn't mean that they're um, they're evil or anything else. It's just they're doing what they just normally do. So yeah, again, it's important to have a healthy respect for wildlife, and just give them the space that they need to be able to go about their business, so that we can also go about our business.
Yeah. Joanne writes from Victoria, I just learned a neighbor of mine is feeding 8 raccoons. Oh my goodness, this is so awkward. I don't want to be the nosy neighbor and be labeled as a troublemaker. Because you're doing the right thing, it then affects other things. Yes, that's the kind of dilemma that you might be faced with as well. And same with Emily, who was calling from Richmond too. Joanne, thanks so much for the email. And Andrea, thank you for the advice. Really timely for this time of year, of course. And let's hope that no more of these kinds of conflicts take place. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Andrea Wallace is the Wild Animal Welfare Manager for the BC SPCA. It's now 12:31, 1:31 in the Mountain Time Zone. This is BC Today here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Michelle Eliot. Thanks so much for joining us. We're also live streaming on CBC Gem, on YouTube, on the CBC Vancouver page, and on our website, cbc.ca/BC. And coming up in our next half hour, we are going to ask you if you have let your own lawn go brown, as we have entered lawn watering bans, of course, in Metro Vancouver. Is the manicured green lawn a little hard to let go of, or does our culture just need changing? We'll talk about that coming up after the CBC News Update. And here's Zara Premji.
Good afternoon. A procession and memorial is set to happen in Penticton around 1 p.m. to honor a BC wildland firefighter who died last month. Zach Muse, who was based in the Okanagan, died fighting the Donny Creek fire near Fort St. John when his heavy-duty ATV rolled over a steep drop on a gravel road. Organizers say the procession at Skaha Lake Park will include the RCMP fire department and crews from the contractor that Muse worked for. And the federal government says it is investing $4.3 million to improve access to reproductive and sexual health programs. Health Minister Mark Holland says the money will be focused on improving access to services for Indigenous and racialized people. He says a new program should help overcome barriers and provide stigma-free access to reproductive health services for vulnerable groups. Now the BC weather for the North Coast, periods of rain, highs to 16. For the Peace region, a risk of thunderstorms and highs around 23. For the Central Interior, also a risk of late afternoon thunderstorms, highs around 22. For the Boundary and Kootenay regions, you guessed it, a risk of thunderstorms and a high of 24. For the Okanagan and Southern Interior, temperatures in the mid to high 20s. And for Metro Vancouver, Victoria and the Fraser Valley, windy and highs to 22. Back to you, Michelle, with BC Today.
Zara, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's Zara Premji from the CBC Vancouver Newsroom. Welcome back. You're with BC Today. We're on CBC Radio 1, 88.1 FM in Metro Vancouver, and live streaming on CBC Gem. That's our live streaming service. And on our website, cbc.ca/BC. You can find us on YouTube as well. And that's CBC Vancouver. Well, when I go for a walk around my neighborhood, I now see rows of golden brown grass. Yes, all the lawns look like that. And that wouldn't have been the case, I don't think, a few years ago. We can be very attached to the manicured green grass lawns. But of course, now Metro Vancouver has implemented Stage 2 water restrictions, which bans all lawn watering. And we're asking you this half hour, is it hard to let go of the green grass? Or is our culture changing and is brown the new green? What about alternatives to grass that are perhaps more environmentally friendly and even drought resistant? We're going to hear some ideas for that. And you can give us a call too, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, star or pound 690 as well. And you can email bctoday@cbc.ca. Do you think our culture needs to change when it comes to what lawns look like? Joining me on Zoom right now is the manager of public works for the city of Port Coquitlam. Now, that city is right now encouraging brown lawns by holding a contest to find the city's golden streets. And so to participate, residents have to submit photos of their well-maintained but not watered lawns. And Dave Kidd is manager of public works for the city of Port Coquitlam. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for joining us. Tell me about this contest.
Yeah, I think the contest, it's a really a creative solution to embrace, the golden brown lawn. So, in support of the stage 2 water restrictions, we want to engage the community and encourage them to let their grass turn golden brown, and as a result, they can win some prizes. So we're having a little bit of fun with it.
And you've launched this contest. Were you finding that people weren't quite getting on board and were still watering their lawns despite the restrictions?
I think we've done a good job at, kind of raising awareness around the stage 2 restrictions. And our first approach is always to educate and raise awareness. And this was just really, again, a creative way to engage the community, have a little fun with it. And as you said, most people kind of, it's a bit of a shift to embrace the golden brown lawn, and we just want to give people an opportunity to win some prizes for supporting and raise attention around water conservation.
Yeah. Why is it important that people do abide by these restrictions right now?
Well, I think typically, this time of year, we see about a 50% increase in water consumption due largely to lawn watering. So this is, again, just a way to raise attention and have a little fun with it. So it's and of course to support the region's stage 2 water restrictions.
Okay. And what are the consequences for people who do still keep watering their lawns?
Well, we have ambassadors that are out monitoring the areas. We do get calls in, and our first approach is, again, to educate, raise awareness. We are at community events such as our weekly farmers market, spreading the word and just encouraging and sharing tips and reminders on water conservation.
All right. And Dave, how can people participate then?
Well, people can participate by posting photos and then tagging the City of Port Coquitlam's social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. They can also submit photos online at portcoquitlam.ca/water-it-right.
Okay, that's portcoquitlam.ca/water-it-right, or you can post onto social media and tag the City of Port Coquitlam. Good luck to everyone who sends in their photos. See, this is a way to encourage you. Maybe you're not quite appreciating that lawn when you get home, but now you can win some prizes. Dave Kidd, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
That's Dave Kidd, Manager of Public Works for the City of Port Coquitlam. And we are asking you, is it time to change our culture when it comes to our lawns? Is brown the new green? And do you think that we should change our perception of what curb appeal should look like? What about alternatives to grass that are more environmentally friendly? Love to hear from you. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733 on your cell phone, star or pound 690. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca. And joining me here in our studio is Karen England, landscape architect at Metro Vancouver's Parks Design and Development. And she's lots of ideas for alternative materials to grow on your lawn. Hello, Karen.
Hello, Michelle.
Thank you very much for joining me. We spoke last week on the Coast, and I just thought it was fascinating. Why do we need to change our approach to our lawns? I know there are restrictions, but at the same time, why does our own perception and our culture need to change?
I think it's interesting to note that lawns are not a natural system. They're a human invented thing. So if we went back in time, you would see that there were no lawns. So it's not as if we're giving up something that we absolutely need to have in our lives. Lawns are an artificial system coming to us from the 17th century English culture. Why do we need to get rid of lawns? I don't think we do need to get rid of lawns entirely. They certainly have their place. There are some uses that lawns are really appropriate for. They take a lot of wear and tear. So if you've got pets or small kids at home,
Yes.
and they need someplace to play,
Yeah.
lawns are great for that. But it's interesting to note, as your last guest said, 50% of water use in the summer goes to watering lawns, and that's a shared resource. I don't know if everyone realizes that the water we use to water our lawns is our drinking water.
Yeah.
Is that really the best use of our treated drinking water?
It's a valuable resource at that. And so when it comes to alternatives, we heard about just letting it go brown and not watering it, but you actually have lots of ideas for other types of materials that we can plant.
That's exactly right. So Metro Vancouver has a website called growgreenguide.ca, where we have free downloadable plans where we suggest lawn alternatives for different growing conditions. So no matter what kind of site conditions you have, there's a plan up there for you. And it's important to note that these plants were developed in conjunction with our partners at the UBC Botanical Garden.
Okay.
When it comes to horticultural advice, who do you trust the most?
You can do no better than going to UBC. Anyone who's visited there certainly would know that. Now, before I go to our first caller, you have brought some lovely samples with you. Why don't you take us through them?
Okay, these are some plants that are beautiful and low water use. So I think some people have an idea that plants that don't use much water are also not very pretty. But that is not the case. So I brought with me today some samples. This is a plant you might recognize.
It's those lovely lavender petals.
Yeah, this is a plant called echinacea.
Oh, really?
Yeah, sometimes you see it, I guess,
It
sold
doesn't
as
just come in bottles at the drugstore.
that's right.
Okay.
This is what happens. This is what it's like before it gets put in a bottle.
Yeah.
So very low water use, a very good pollinator supporting plant also.
Gorgeous.
So beautiful. Just because it doesn't use a lot of water doesn't mean it's dowdy.
And would you cover a whole lawn with that?
No, this is like a low water use perennial plant.
Okay.
Roses also. This is a spray rose called ballerina, but
I've never seen that before.
You like
They're
that
very
one?
small. Yeah,
very
just
small.
so delicate and beautiful.
it blooms from early spring to late fall if you clip it. And roses, as you probably can imagine, come to us from a part of the world where there is lower water. But we also have good native roses, very low water use and beautiful and pollinating supporting. And finally, I have one more sample to share. I have two, but this one's kind of, this is something called sea holly, kind of more spiky architectural
Yes.
plant. The
Like
fancy,
a little orb.
Yeah.
Purple orb.
Fancy floral designers will put them in bouquets because they're a nice contrast to other sorts of plants. But this plant is a hydrangea.
Yes, I love hydrangeas.
There are some hydrangeas that are really use a lot of water and don't like a lot of heat and drought.
Okay.
There is a hydrangea that grows in Vancouver very well called PG hydrangea that does really well with low water and high temperatures. So you don't have to give up your hydrangea.
There you go. These ones are specifically better with water. If you'd like to take a look at these gorgeous, gorgeous plants and flowers that Karen has brought in, you can go to our live stream on our website, cbc.ca/BC, or if you're using the CBC Gem app, you can certainly start that up, or you can go to YouTube too. We're on CBC Vancouver. That's the page that you'd look for. They are just stunning. Echinacea, who knew? Spray roses and the PG hydrangea, and as well the website that you mentioned was?
Growgreenguide.ca.
Growgreenguide.ca. I've been to it, and it gives you so many examples of what you can grow as an alternative to green grass. Asking you, do we need to change our culture, our perception when it comes to the manicured green grass lawns? Are you letting your own go brown? Are you pursuing alternatives? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Lots of calls are coming in, and Jan is calling from Vancouver. Hi, Jan.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Sure thing. What are your thoughts on these kinds of alternatives?
Yeah, what I've found frustrating over the years, and especially now with the stage 2, is the stratas and housing complexes having automatic sprinklers every day, watering lawns, and not just turning them off for the time that they're supposed to.
Even now?
It's even now. I mean, even in my building, when I mentioned it to the manager actually a few weeks ago every morning, she says, well, I can't do anything about it. I'll have to report it to the supervisor, and nothing's being done still. And we have peat moss, so it's like, or, wood chips. Why are you watering wood chips?
Right. And so it sounds like there was a setting or something like that, or that's a decision that needs to go through some
Well,
bureaucracy.
it's an automatic setting for a lot of stratas I see.
Yeah.
I mean, I walk by in the morning and they're sprinkling off.
Right.
They're not turning them off. And
Okay.
the culture does need to change. I mean, what's brown grass? Give it a good rain and it pops up again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not permanent either, is it? Just
No,
wait
no,
for
it's
the fall.
not.
Jan, thank you very much. That sounds like something we should follow up on. I don't know if you've heard about that in Metro Vancouver. The sprinklers automatically going off even now at strata complexes.
It sounds like a setting problem to me too,
Yeah.
just as you said, Michelle.
Yeah. I know that a few weeks ago we heard from someone in Kelowna and she was part of their Water Smart program and said that often they'll go and visit these complexes or residential buildings, and there's an automatic setting, and it's as simple as turning that off to be able to conserve water. Thank you so much, Jen, for letting us know about that. Bob is up next now in Port Coquitlam. Hi, Bob. Thanks so much for calling. What does your lawn look like?
Hi.
Hi, Bob.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, tell us about your lawn.
Yes, not only does it look golden brown, which is not a bad color at all, but we can save a tremendous amount of power not cutting the lawns, electricity or gas. And the gas, of course, is far more polluting than any other mechanical machine out there. And so we are helping the environment in not constantly cutting our grass.
Sure.
And so let's grow other things. And another way to conserve water, which I do, is save all my water in jugs. And it's amazing. I have four big containers of water I end up at the end of the day from rinsing, when I rinse my vegetables or when I'm washing the dishes, and just saving that water and using that to water all the plants around my
using the gray water.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how much water we use in the day.
You're absolutely right, Bob. You're absolutely right. And it's just a better option, right? To reuse that water for things like watering plants, just reusing your dishwasher water. As we heard from Karen, a lot of people don't know that the water we use to sprinkle in our sprinklers on our lawns are actually the treated water we drink. So good on you for doing that, first of all, but also you've let your own lawn go brown, and it's all about that as well. Perhaps maybe not maintaining that perfectly mowed lawn. And is this true that grass that you let grow a little bit more can absorb water better? Like if we have rain like today.
It's true that if you do good seasonal maintenance, your lawn will be healthier longer. And one of the things you could do in spring is to aerate your lawn. That opens up holes in the surface of the lawn to let the water soak in. Or thatch your lawn, take a rake and get rid of most of the dead grass. Right. And that helps the water absorb more deeply.
Well, yeah, what a great idea for a day like today, right? We are actually seeing rain around the province. And so let that rain permeate through your lawn better. Not perhaps, that's right, just rake through it, aerate it, or just don't cut it. There you go. Renee's on the line in Victoria now. Oh, you would like to talk about an alternative to grass, Renee?
Yes, I would.
Yes,
and I'm a big fan of the clover, the micro clover. I'm absolutely in love with it. And
Karen's got a big smile on her face right now.
And it fixes nitrogen in the soil, and it is wonders for the pollinators. And and you don't have to mow it either. And it's I was visiting my neighbor yesterday, and her lawn is brown. She hasn't been watering it, but in the middle, she's got this patch of natural clover, and it's green, and it just it seems to be way more drought resistant. We're not getting any rain. We had a little spit overnight. That's it. Like we're not like Vancouver, but so the micro clover for me, I am absolutely in love with it. But also, for another topic for water use, it's been mind-boggling for me for years why we are flushing good drinking water down our toilets. That's another topic, but that could save tons of water if we went to composting toilets or gray water stuff.
Yeah, that's another, you're right, another conversation there.
Yeah, for sure. But the micro clover is I'm just absolutely in love with it. And we get far less rain than you guys do.
Sure, in Victoria, really great. And I know that this is something you're a big fan of as well.
Also a fan of micro clover.
Yeah.
Another good point about micro clover is, when you have a dog and it pees on your lawn, it leaves yellow spots. But the dog pee does not leave yellow spots on micro clover.
That is a big plus.
Another big plus.
There you go. And as well, as she mentioned, it fixes nitrogen. It is pollinator friendly as well. Yeah, that's a great one, Renee. Thank you very much. Go growgreengrass.ca.
Growgreenguide.ca.
Guide.ca. I need to take better notes. growgreenguide.ca is where you can go for more ideas as well. Let's take another call here. And let's just read some emails to 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. And Ben and Julia wrote us, and they've sent us a photo as well. Oh. We replaced our front lawn with inexpensive, drought-tolerant, pollinator-friendly plants, perhaps like the microclover, that have thrived through long stretches of hot weather without any watering. It is one of the best decisions we have made since moving to our home, and we don't miss having a lawn at all. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much for that. That must have been some work, but it's paid off for you. Jim writes as well, I'd like to see golf courses also cut off from watering at this stage as well. And that's Jim writing us from Comox. Do you know if that's something that golf courses have done, that they have also stopped watering the greens at their courses?
I don't know that, Michelle.
Okay. Yeah, we'll check on that as well, Jim. Thank you very much for that too. Yeah, it's interesting to see how these water restrictions are being implemented or not at various places. Thanks very much for that email. We are talking about alternatives to the green grass lawn. And have you let yours just simply grow brown? Of course, right now there are lawn watering bans in Metro Vancouver as we have moved to stage 2 water restrictions. And as you know, drought conditions all around the province. Despite the rain that we are seeing today, it's supposed to help somewhat with the wildfires that we're seeing around the province too, but not in the long run. And thanks very much for your emails on that. And just to wrap up here, Karen, what advice do you have for someone who's considering? We have people who have already been converted to the alternatives, but for someone who's thinking about it now, especially as the drought is top of mind.
I would say consider how you're using the lawn that you've got. Do you use it mostly just when you go out to mow it and water it, or do you actually need it? How is it something you look at, or is it something you use? Maybe you have a space in your yard to convert most of your lawn into a lawn alternative. There's so many beautiful options for plants that are beautifully evergreen or scented or blooming, pollinating, supporting, that you could use, that only grow a couple inches tall. They don't require much maintenance. They don't require much water, that you could be replacing your lawn with.
And are those plants the kinds of things you can be comfortable in? Like if you're sitting, if you like to sit in your garden and things like that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So for example, on a really hot day, Corsican mint is a little low-growing plant that releases the scent of mint and makes you feel cool.
Oh, wow.
Just because it smells so beautiful and refreshing.
Mint, absolutely. This is just so eye-opening, and I hope more people take up this advice. growgreenguide.ca.
That's right.
Really nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
That's Karen England with Metro Vancouver, a landscape architect there. It is now 1:53 in the Mountain Time Zone. And to Penticton now. It is just about 1 o'clock, and that procession, the memorial procession for the fallen firefighter, is set to begin in just a few moments. CBC journalist Jay Bertagnoli joins us now live at the start of the procession that is about to begin. Again, it's for fallen firefighter Zachary Muse. He was the contracted wildfire firefighter from Ontario who died fighting the Donny Creek blaze that was in northeastern BC. And Jay joins me now. Hi there, good afternoon.
Hi, Michelle. Nice to join you.
Can you describe for us, Jay? I know we were trying to connect through a camera there, but can you describe for us what you're seeing around you?
Absolutely. So I'm standing at Skaha Lake at the public beach here. On one side, of course, is the beach with people in the water and on the beach. And on the other side of me is some volleyball courts and a public park. And in between is a strip of asphalt. And this is where the procession is going to take place. Leading the procession will be a truck, an RCMP vehicle with its lights on, and behind them is the wide and varied color guard. You have people from all over the province who came. I spoke to firefighters from Adams Lake who drove down today. I spoke to paramedics from across the province who came in, and they're dressed in their color guard finest. And then we also have, of course, people from Zach's company. And they are here, and they're very distinctive because they're carrying their helmets and axes.
Okay, and that was the big Wildcat company. We heard from one of his managers earlier on in the program. What are you hearing? What are they saying about Zachary?
saying that he was a great guy. What they're telling me also is that he was the type of guy that you wanted to have beside you out in the fire and out in the woods. He, of course, is working for a private company, for a contractor, but this group of firefighters that work all summer, they call themselves a brotherhood. So it doesn't matter if you're a contractor to them or if you're with BC Wildfire Service or with somebody else, you're there fighting the fires and working to save what you can and to help people who need help. And that's what we're seeing here today. We're seeing people coming and supporting Zach. His family flew in from Ontario. They're here, and it's going to be a very emotional event.
I can imagine. So, absolutely. And of course, as you've been saying, firefighters from other parts of the province have been there as well. It has been such a difficult wildfire season already. And we are, still just in early August here and already, record breaking in the province, of course. What is being planned for today then? We know that there's a procession and that will end at a gondola. What else is being planned as the procession gets underway?
Absolutely. So there'll be a procession coming down and they'll land at a gazebo and there's 100 chairs set up. I think all of those are going to probably be more than 100 people here for it. And it's going to be then a memorial for Zach, and members of his team and members of the other parts of the service will be talking about the duty and the sacrifice and the type of person that he was. And so we expect that to last for about an hour or so. The procession is just beginning. You can just hear in the distance the bagpipes, and it's coming down towards me right now, and they're marching slowly, methodically, and with the respectfulness to them.
And we heard from the city of Penticton on this. Jay, what advice do they have for people who still plan to come down in the next hour?
It's open to the public. They just ask you to be respectful of the family and be respectful of those that are here to pay tribute. And if you want to pay tribute, of course, support is always welcome. It is an event where people want to be together to remember Zach and to remember the sacrifice that these guys did.
Jay, thank you so much for joining us from there. We look forward to more coverage of this, I'm sure, as you said, what will be an emotional memorial. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
That is CBC journalist Jay Bertagnoli joining us from Penticton. Again, that memorial procession is set to get underway in just a few minutes from now at 1 o'clock and will last for 1 hour, and it will end at the gazebo near Skaha Lake. It is now 12:58, 1:58 in the Mountain Time Zone, and that's it for our show today. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us and called in to the discussion. Always good to hear from you. You can email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. You can listen again on the CBC Listen app and watch us again on YouTube. I'm Michelle Eliot. Have a good afternoon. We'll talk tomorrow.